You will wear the blue silk, Louisa, and for once in your life you will look a woman who has never had an opinion." Sir Cuthbert Atherley delivered the order at 9:30 on the morning of the 12th June 1817, as though obedience were another item in the household accounts. He stood before the breakfast-room mirror, adjusting his cravat while his daughter remained beside the cold grate. His guest would arrive before noon. Louisa was to smile, speak only when spoken to, and allow Lady Augusta Clevedon to guide the conversation toward music, charitable visits, and the agreeable management of a country house. "Mr. Rivington has not come to hear you lecture on broken seals," Sir Cuthbert continued. "He is connected to a household of consequence. You will not embarrass me by behaving like a clerk." Louisa looked at the pale blue silk laid across a chair. It had been chosen because it made her eyes appear softer and her age less definite. At 31, she had learned that men often called a woman plain when they meant she had failed to arrange herself for their comfort. "I am expected in the cabinet room," she said. "The Cranford objects must be checked before your guest sees them. The objects have survived 6 centuries. They can survive one morning without your interference. The catalogue cannot." Sir Cuthbert's hands stopped at his cuffs. "The catalogue bears my name." That is precisely the difficulty. Footsteps sounded in the corridor before he could answer. A servant appeared to announce that Lady Augusta had arrived early. Sir Cuthbert lowered his voice. "Wear the silk, and don't discuss authorship." Louisa inclined her head with the courtesy due a baronet, and gave him none of the obedience he expected. 10 minutes later, she crossed the west passage, wearing her plainest brown serge dress. The cuffs had been turned once to preserve them, and old dust had roughened the hem, despite Nell Wren's brushing. It was not a gown designed to attract a man's notice. It was a gown in which a woman could work without asking permission from the furniture. Louisa carried her catalogue portfolio beneath one arm. In her pocket rested her mother's folding tortoise-shell magnifier, the hinge marked by a small scratch that her thumb found whenever she was anxious. The cabinet room smelled of beeswax, old wood, and the faint mineral chill of metal kept from sunlight. Coins, reliquaries, painted glass fragments, and monastic tokens occupied cases along the walls. At the center stood an old exhibition table fitted with a shallow removable tray, once used to rotate fragile objects without lifting the heavy outer case. Sir Cuthbert had not used it in years, but Louisa had catalogued the construction along with everything else he had forgotten. The Cranford priory seal matrix lay in a small mahogany case upon the table. It belonged to the house of Revington, though it had remained at Atherley Hall under one of the careless old loans Sir Cuthbert preferred because careless arrangements allowed possession to resemble ownership. Louisa opened the case. The bronze matrix was dark with age, its central saint surrounded by a Latin legend worn smooth at the highest points. Beneath the figure rested a 7-pointed star. The lower point had been chipped through to the edge. Near the final letters, the border thickened irregularly, as though the engraver had corrected his spacing too late. Louisa unfolded the magnifier and bent closer. The floor remained exactly where she had recorded it 3 months earlier. She checked the diameter against her notes, then tested the mahogany hinge. It shifted under her fingers. "Still loose," she murmured. She warmed a square of red wax over the spirit lamp, pressed the matrix carefully, and lifted it without twisting. The impression emerged cleanly upon a cream card. The broken point cut through the star. The thickened border showed at the final letters. Beneath it, Louisa wrote, "The 12th June 1817, L.A." She had just returned the card to her portfolio when the cabinet room door opened. A gentleman stood upon the threshold, without a servant to announce him. He was tall, dark-haired, and dressed with the restraint of a man whose coat had been cut by someone expensive enough not to advertise it. His attention moved first to the open case, then to the wax card, and only afterward to Louisa. "I beg your pardon," he said. "I was told the collection was here." His voice was quiet, but it carried the certainty of someone accustomed to being heard without raising it. Louisa folded the magnifier. "You must be Mr. Rivington." A brief pause touched his expression. "I am Rivington. My father said you were coming on behalf of the Cranford household." In a manner of speaking, he stepped inside, but he did not approach the table until she moved aside enough to permit it. "Were you making an impression of the priory seal?" "Yes, for the catalogue, for accuracy." His gaze rested on the handwritten card. "Aren't those the same thing?" Louisa almost smiled. "They should be." He looked toward the bound catalogue sheets. Who prepared the entries? The sensible answer was Sir Cuthbert. The safe answer was Sir Cuthbert. Louisa had given safe answers for years and watched them become permanent records. "I prepared the measurements, translations, and provenance notes," she said. "My father altered several descriptions and placed his name on the title page." Mr. Rivington did not offer sympathy. Louisa was grateful for that. Which descriptions did he alter? "The Cranford seal is listed as undamaged." She opened the case wider and pointed with the closed magnifier. "The lower point of the star is chipped. The border also thickens here. Neither feature is accidental wear in the wax impression. Both belong to the matrix." He leaned closer, careful not to touch. "How long have you known?" 3 months with certainty. Longer with suspicion. "And your father?" "He knows what I wrote." "That wasn't what I asked." Louisa met his eyes. They were grey, steady, and far more observant than Sir Cuthbert would have liked. "He knows the seal is damaged. He prefers the word complete because collectors prefer it." "Do you have proof beyond your present impression?" "My notes are dated. The matrix can be compared with the old Cranford charter if the household still possesses it." "It does." The answer came too readily for an ordinary agent, but Louisa was already committed to the truth. "Then the charter impression should show the same defect. If it doesn't, my conclusion is wrong. You would allow the object to disprove you. An object has no duty to preserve my pride." Something changed in his face. Not amusement, recognition perhaps, and the catalogue bears Sir Cuthbert's name alone. "Yes. Why? Because he is a baronet, and I am his unmarried daughter. That explains how he did it. It doesn't explain why anyone accepted it." Before Louisa could answer, hurried steps crossed the passage. Sir Cuthbert entered with Lady Augusta behind him, pale gold silk gleaming at her shoulders. His gaze struck Louisa's brown dress first, then the open seal case, then the gentleman beside her. All colour left his face. "Louisa," he said, "what have you been saying?" "Mr. Rivington asked who prepared the catalogue." Sir Cuthbert bowed so quickly that Augusta took one startled step backward. "Your Grace, I hadn't been told you had arrived." The words altered the air in the room. Louisa looked from her father's lowered head to the man she had mistaken for an antiquarian agent. Lawrence Rivington, Duke of Cranford, turned toward her. He did not appear offended that she had failed to recognize him. He appeared offended that her father expected him to silence her. Sir Cuthbert straightened with a strained smile. "My daughter has an unfortunate habit of overstating her little assistants. I'll explain the catalogue privately. The Duke's gaze remained on Louisa. Please continue, Miss Atherley, he said. Your father's name hasn't answered my questions. For one breath after Lawrence spoke, no one moved. Sir Cuthbert remained between the door and the central table, his smile fixed too carefully to be sincere. Augusta's gaze shifted from Louisa's plain brown dress to the open mahogany case, and then to Lawrence, as though recalculating the room. Louisa felt the full force of what had happened. She had accused her father of stealing authorship in front of a duke. Worse, she had done so without fear, because she had not known she ought to be afraid. Lawrence turned slightly toward her. Before anything else, Miss Atherley, I owe you an apology. Sir Cuthbert made a small sound of protest. Lawrence did not look at him. I allowed you to believe I was merely an agent, he continued. That gave me an advantage you did not consent to. You spoke more freely because you thought rank wasn't listening. Louisa closed the magnifier in her hand. Would your grace prefer that I repeat my answers now that I know who you are? I would prefer that you decide whether to answer at all. His tone remained level. If you wish me to leave, I will. That offer unsettled her more than command would have. A duke offering to withdraw from his own object was not a courtesy Sir Cuthbert understood. Her father stepped forward. Your Grace, there's no need to encourage Louisa's dramatics. She's become over-attached to these objects. That wasn't addressed to you, Lawrence said. The words were quiet. Sir Cuthbert stopped. Louisa looked at the seal. It belonged to House of Rivington, not to her father, not to her, and certainly not to Pride. Stay, she said. The matrix is yours. What I say about it should be open to examination. Lawrence inclined his head. Then we begin again. Augusta moved nearer the window, her hands folded at her waist. She wore pale gold silk, and the composed expression of a woman who had learned that silence could be used as an ornament. Sir Cuthbert tried another smile. Louisa has copied descriptions for me since she was a girl. It occupies her. One must give unmarried daughters some useful pastime. Louisa felt the old humiliation settle over her like dust. Lawrence looked at the bound catalogue pages beside the case. Miss Atherley, which portions are yours? The measurements, the translations, the comparison notes, the provenance entries where I could establish them, and which are Sir Cuthbert's, the alterations in the fair copy, several claims of completeness, 2 dates I could not verify, his name on the title page. Sir Cuthbert's face darkened. You see how she speaks, as though a household notebook were a learned publication. Is it intended for circulation? Lawrence asked. Among a few subscribers, then it is a publication. Augusta intervened with gentle concern. Surely authorship is a family matter. Sir Cuthbert provided the collection, the rooms, and the education that allowed Louisa to assist. Louisa turned toward her. My mother taught me Latin inscriptions. Augusta's smile did not change. Then it was a charming accomplishment to inherit. Accuracy is not charming. Lawrence's attention sharpened, but he did not rescue the statement by praising it. Instead, he asked, Show me the defect. Louisa unfolded the tortoiseshell magnifier and moved to the table. The star beneath the saint has 7 points. The lower one is chipped through to the outer edge. She held the magnifier above the matrix without touching the bronze. Lawrence came to the opposite side of the case. He bent close enough to follow the line she indicated, yet left the working space to her. There, she said, the break is not surface wear. It interrupts the engraved point. Near the final letters of the legend, the border also thickens. He studied both features, and Sir Cuthbert's description says undamaged. complete and exceptionally preserved. Those are not the same claim. Collectors often pretend they are. Sir Cuthbert gave an impatient laugh. It is a minute flaw. No purchaser would care. Lawrence straightened. I care. Sir Cuthbert's laugh died. Louisa shifted the case slightly so the light reached the lower edge. The loose hinge gave way without warning. The lid tilted sideways, pulling the base after it. Louisa caught one corner. Lawrence reached at the same moment. Their fingers brushed along the polished mahogany. The contact lasted no more than an instant, but the awareness of it was immediate. His hand was warm. Hers tightened reflexively. Both withdrew as soon as the case steadied. Neither apologized. Lawrence secured the lid with his palm while Louisa adjusted the base. The distance between them returned, but not the indifference that had existed before. "The hinge is loose," she said, more quietly than she intended. "I noted it 3 months ago. Was it repaired?" "No." "Was the note removed from the catalogue as well?" "It was reduced to minor wear." Lawrence looked towards Sir Cuthbert. "I will not endorse a catalogue that misstates condition or authorship." Sir Cuthbert paled. "Your Grace, I'm sure this can be resolved without such severity." "Accuracy is not severity. The collection has been associated with my family for years." "Association does not transfer ownership." Lawrence's gaze moved to the seal matrix. "This object belongs to House of Rivington. It is not to leave this room without my written authorization." Augusta's head lifted slightly. Sir Cuthbert said, "Surely you don't suspect me of removing it. I am stating the condition of its continued presence." Lawrence turned back to Louisa. "Is your impression dated?" She opened the portfolio and showed him the cream card without surrendering it. 12 June 1817. "My initials." The red wax carried the broken star clearly. Lawrence examined it from where he stood. "Keep it." Sir Cuthbert's eyes fixed on the card. "That should remain with the collection." "It is Miss Atherley's record," Lawrence said. "She made it." The correction landed with greater force than praise. Louisa slid the card between 2 clean sheets and returned it to the portfolio. "By mid-afternoon, Mr. Elias Merton arrived from London with a narrow leather case, a pocket scale, brass calipers, and the expression of a man who trusted numbers more than hospitality. He was 42, spare in build, and precise without being theatrical. Lawrence introduced him as his private secretary. Merton bowed to Louisa before opening his ledger. "His Grace requires a condition memorandum witnessed by all present," he said. Sir Cuthbert had attempted to excuse himself, but Lawrence had asked him to remain. Augusta stayed as well, seated near the window with an embroidery frame she did not use. Louisa watched Merton weigh the matrix, measure its diameter and dictate each detail. Bronze priory seal matrix. Diameter 3 inches and 1/4. Weight 11 ounces. 7-pointed star beneath central saint. Lower point chipped through to edge. Border irregularly thickened near final letters. Mahogany case, hinge loose. Louisa compared each figure with her notes. They matched. Merton turned the ledger towards Sir Cuthbert, Lawrence, and Louisa in that order. "Any objection?" Sir Cuthbert looked as though each word had been entered against him personally. "Only that such detail encourages needless alarm." "No objection to the accuracy?" Merton asked. "No." Augusta lowered her eyes to the untouched embroidery. Merton completed the original memorandum, then prepared a signed duplicate on a second sheet. He handed it to Louisa. "For correction of the catalogue, Miss Atherley." She accepted the paper carefully. It was the first formal record of her work, that another man had placed directly into her possession, rather than through her father. Thank you. You needn't thank a record for being correct, Merton said. A faint amusement touched Lawrence's eyes. Sir Cuthbert saw it when the men moved toward the adjoining room to discuss the loan. Augusta rose and followed, but paused just beyond the half-open door. Louisa remained beside the table, securing the signed duplicate inside her portfolio. Sir Cuthbert's voice carried from the next room, stripped of polish by fear. If he withdraws his name, we lose the London lease. Augusta answered too softly for Louisa to hear. Then she stepped back into view. Her gaze did not settle on Louisa. It settled on the red wax impression hidden inside the portfolio, and the stillness of her face was more troubling than anger would have been. By 6 o'clock on Friday, the 13th of June, Sir Cuthbert had transformed the dining room into a monument to authorship he had not earned. A fresh prospectus lay beside every place setting, printed on heavy cream paper and headed catalogue of the Atherley collection, compiled and annotated by Sir Cuthbert Atherley. Louisa's name appeared nowhere. Even the Cranford priory seal entry carried her measurements beneath her father's claim of sole scholarship. She stood in the doorway with Mrs. Lydia Barlow at her side and felt the familiar pressure to become smaller than what she knew. Lydia, her mother's elder sister, had arrived from London that afternoon in response to Louisa's carefully restrained letter. At 56, she possessed the quiet authority of a woman who had survived long enough to stop apologizing for seeing clearly. Her gaze moved from the prospectus to Sir Cuthbert, who was receiving a county antiquarian near the mantel. "He has printed the lie before anyone can object to it," Lydia murmured. "He has printed it so objection will appear impolite. Then let us hope the truth has poor manners." Louisa almost smiled, but Sir Cuthbert had seen them. He crossed the room with a folded sheet in one hand. "Lydia, I had not understood your visit would coincide with a formal dinner. That is why I came," Lydia said. "Louisa should not face a formal dinner without family." Sir Cuthbert's mouth tightened at the definition. He turned to Louisa and held out the paper. "Sign this before we sit down." Louisa read the first line. "I, Louisa Atherley, acknowledge that my contribution to Sir Cuthbert Atherley's catalogue consisted solely of copying, domestic organization, and clerical assistance undertaken under his direction." The word assistance struck with a force beyond the page. She remembered hearing it throughout childhood whenever her mother translated an inscription or corrected a date. Mrs. Atherley had assisted. She had helped. She had occupied herself. Her intelligence had always been converted into a household virtue before anyone could call it knowledge. "I won't sign this," Louisa said. Sir Cuthbert lowered his voice. "You will sign it because His Grace has made authorship unnecessarily important. He made accuracy important. You made authorship false. This declaration protects the family from an ugly dispute. It protects you from the truth." Augusta approached in silver blue silk, her expression arranged into sympathetic concern. "Louisa, surely no one doubts that you were useful. But a gentleman who maintains a collection is generally understood to direct its catalogue." Lydia looked at her. Generally understood by whom? Augusta ignored the question. A public disagreement will only make Louisa appear resentful. Louisa handed the paper back unsigned. "Then I shall have to appear resentful." Sir Cuthbert's face hardened. "If you refuse, you will not speak of the collection tonight. You invited men to praise descriptions I wrote. I invited them to discuss my catalogue. Then they may discover how little you know about it." The first guests were close enough now to hear the final sentence. Sir Cuthbert stepped back rather than risk a scene before witnesses. We will finish this later. No, Louisa said. We have finished it now. Dinner began beneath a discipline so polished that every silence became visible. Lawrence sat at Sir Cuthbert's right, with Augusta across from him and Louisa farther down the table beside Lydia. Mr. Elias Merton occupied the place near the two London antiquarians, his signed condition memorandum folded inside his coat. Sir Cuthbert guided the conversation through Roman coins, monastic glass, and the supposed rarity of the Cranford seal. He spoke fluently whenever no detail was required. Augusta encouraged him with questions shaped to produce praise. Louisa said nothing until one of the county subscribers lifted the prospectus. Sir Cuthbert, your description of the priory matrix is remarkably complete. You call the lower emblem a 6-rayed device. Is that uncommon? Sir Cuthbert paused. The exact number of rays is difficult to determine because of age. Louisa looked at her plate. Across the table, Lawrence noticed. Is it difficult? He asked. Sir Cuthbert gave a faint laugh. These objects invite differences of interpretation. Lawrence turned to the subscriber. Perhaps each of us should answer without consulting the prospectus. Augusta's fork stopped against her plate. What an unusual entertainment. It is less unusual than publishing certainty one cannot defend. Lawrence looked first to the older London antiquarian. How many points does the star have? The gentleman frowned. 6, I believe. The second offered 8. The rector said the form might be a flower rather than a star. Sir Cuthbert called it decorative and therefore immaterial. Lawrence did not correct them. He looked toward Louisa. Miss Atherley, every face turned to her. The room expected either hesitation or triumph. Louisa offered neither. 7 points. The lower point is chipped through to the outer edge. The border thickens near the final letters of the legend. The matrix measures 3 inches and 1/4 in diameter and weighs 11 ounces. The mahogany case has a loose hinge on the left. Merton withdrew his memorandum. That agrees with the witnessed condition record made yesterday. Sir Cuthbert's hand tightened around his wineglass. Louisa had every opportunity to memorize Mr. Merton's figures. She gave me the same figures before I measured the object. Merton replied. The widowed collector, seated near Lydia, examined the prospectus again. Then the printed description is wrong. It is simplified, Sir Cuthbert said. Louisa looked directly at him. It says undamaged. A minor chip does not alter the character of the piece. It alters the truth of the sentence. Lawrence laid one hand upon the prospectus beside his plate. And the title page? Sir Cuthbert's colour deepened. My daughter worked under my direction. Did you direct the measurements? I supervised the household in which they were taken. Lydia's expression became almost pleasant. By that reasoning, your cook may claim authorship of every letter written after dinner. A restrained ripple of amusement moved around the table. Sir Cuthbert did not join it. Lawrence turned to Louisa. Did you prepare the descriptions represented here? Most of them. Do you consent to their publication under Sir Cuthbert's sole name? No. Then these prospectuses should not circulate. Sir Cuthbert pushed back slightly from the table. Your Grace, they have already been printed. Printing a false claim does not make it less false. He looked toward Merton. Collect them after dinner. Merton inclined his head. At once, the subscriber beside him quietly folded his copy closed. Others followed. The movement was small, but Louisa felt it through the room. Her father had expected public print to make his version permanent. Instead, every prospectus now looked like evidence against him. Augusta intervened before the silence could settle. Perhaps we should leave scholarship to tomorrow. Miss Atherley plays very prettily, I believe. Do you favor the harp, Louisa? No. The pianoforte, then, when it is properly tuned. Augusta smiled as if Louisa had performed exactly as expected. Lawrence glanced toward Louisa over the rim of his glass. For one brief moment, his restraint gave way to amusement. Louisa answered with the smallest smile of her own. It was private, unplanned, and gone before Sir Cuthbert could turn. Yet the exchange warmed something in her that had nothing to do with rescue. He had not spoken for her. He had made the room listen when she spoke for herself. After dinner, Merton gathered the prospectuses into a single stack and tied them with cord. Lawrence approached Louisa and Lydia in the drawing-room, where the doors remained open and servants moved within sight. "The Cranford Charter is at Rivington House," he said. "I would like Miss Atherley to compare its impression with the seal." Lydia asked, "Under what arrangement?" "A formal visit on Sunday afternoon. You would accompany her. Merton will open the archive, and the charter will remain under glass." Louisa appreciated that he addressed the practical conditions before presuming acceptance. "If the impression differs from mine, I shall correct my conclusion," she said. "That is why I am asking you. Then we will come." Sir Cuthbert, standing near Augusta, heard the answer. The pleasantness left his face. Later, as the last guests prepared to depart, Louisa crossed the entrance hall in search of Lydia's shawl. Near the service passage, the porter was speaking in a low voice to Sir Cuthbert. "The Pall Mall house wants to know whether the small case is to be entered under the books or separately, sir." Sir Cuthbert saw Louisa before the porter finished. "That will do." Augusta stepped from the shadow of the staircase and closed the service door between them. "You should not listen to servants' business," she said. Louisa looked at the brass latch, then at Augusta's composed face. "Then, perhaps servants' business should not concern the Cranford collection." Augusta did not answer. From behind the closed door came the faint sound of Sir Cuthbert saying, "Tell them Lot 47 remains unchanged." On Saturday, the 14th of June, Louisa left Atherley Hall before 8 in the morning with Mrs. Lydia Barlow beside her and the catalogue portfolio secured beneath her own hand. The cream card bearing the red wax impression, dated the 12th June, rested between two clean sheets inside it. Mr. Merton's signed duplicate condition memorandum lay behind the card, its measurements and observations matching Louisa's notes. Her mother's folding tortoiseshell magnifier remained in the pocket of her dark blue travelling dress, where the small scratch near its hinge met her thumb whenever the carriage struck an uneven stretch of road. Sir Cuthbert had not come to the front steps to see them depart. He had sent a message through a footman, stating that a daughter who chose to question her father before a duke could hardly expect the comforts of family approval. Lydia had read the message, folded it once, and used it to steady the leg of a rattling travelling desk. "It performs more useful work there," she had said. The journey from Kent to London required nearly 5 hours with a halt to rest at the horses. Louisa spent most of it reviewing dates, weights, and the exact form of the seal's damaged star. Lydia allowed the silence until they had passed Bromley. "You have checked that memorandum 4 times, she observed. 3, then the 4th is overdue." Louisa closed the portfolio. "The charter may disprove me, and if it does, I correct the catalogue. That answer is why His Grace asked you rather than your father." Louisa looked through the carriage window. "His Grace asked because the object belongs to him. He also listened because the work belongs to you." Louisa did not answer. Lawrence's face had remained with her more persistently than she wished. Not because he was a duke. The title had complicated him rather than improved him. What remained was the memory of a man who had asked whether she wanted him to leave his own cabinet room, and who had placed a signed record into her possession without treating it as a favor. They reached Lydia's Bloomsbury lodgings in the afternoon and rested there overnight. On Sunday, the 15th of June, a hired carriage took them west to Grosvenor Square. Rivington House stood behind black iron railings, its pale stone front severe enough to discourage admiration. Louisa had expected grandeur. She had not expected quiet. No line of servants waited to inspect her gown. Merton received them in the entrance hall, bowed first to Lydia, and led them through a drawing-room into a smaller archive chamber at the rear of the house. Lawrence was already there. He wore a dark morning coat and held no document in his hands, as though he had decided not to conceal uncertainty behind paper. Mrs. Barlow, Miss Atherley. He bowed. "Thank you for coming." "You offered evidence," Louisa said. "That is generally persuasive." A faint warmth touched his expression. "Merton has spent the morning reminding me that evidence should be prepared before it is offered." His Grace wished to move the charter nearer the window. Merton said, "I explained that 6 centuries of survival should not end because the light was inconvenient." Lydia looked approvingly at him. The charter lay beneath glass in a locked display case on a long table. The parchment had darkened with age, but the wax impression hanging from braided cords remained protected within a shallow recess. Merton unlocked the outer cover without removing the charter. Louisa placed her portfolio beside the case and unfolded the magnifier. The ancient impression showed a saint surrounded by a worn legend. Beneath the figure rested a 7-pointed star. The lower point was broken through to the edge. Near the final letters, the border thickened in the same irregular manner as the bronze matrix at Atherley Hall. Louisa examined it twice, then set Mr. Merton's duplicate memorandum beside the glass. "The defects correspond," she said. Lawrence stood opposite her. "With your impression as well." Louisa removed the cream card and held it beside the charter without touching the glass. The red wax carried the same broken point and the same crowded border. "Yes, the matrix I examined on the 12th June is genuine. Or at least it is the matrix that made an impression consistent with this charter. That is a careful distinction. Careful distinctions are what remain after confidence has done its damage." Merton recorded her conclusion. Lydia moved to the adjoining room where the door remained open, giving Louisa and Lawrence enough space to speak without violating propriety. Lawrence looked down at the charter. "My father lent objects because he believed friendship was stronger than paper." Was he correct? No. The answer came without defensiveness. He was generous with things he understood emotionally and careless with things he was required to protect materially. "I inherited the title 9 months ago. Since then, I have discovered that half the collection is where the old inventory says it should be, and the other half is where someone remembers seeing it 15 years ago. Then Sir Cuthbert is not the only man who benefited from informality. No, Lawrence met her eyes, and I would prefer not to hide behind the fact that I did not create the disorder. I inherited responsibility with the title." Louisa looked at the old wax beneath glass. "Ignorance can be corrected." "You said something similar at Atherley Hall. Pretending certainty is more dangerous, particularly when everyone is too polite to challenge it. You challenged mine before you knew I had any. I thought you were an agent. Would you have spoken differently if you had known? Louisa considered the question. I would have chosen each word more carefully, but not the conclusion. No. His gaze remained on her for one quiet moment longer than courtesy required. Then it moved to the magnifier in her hand. May I see it? Louisa's fingers closed around the tortoise-shell frame. No one outside her family had held it since her mother's death. Lawrence did not extend his hand. He waited. It belonged to my mother, she said. She used it for inscriptions. Then I will understand if the answer is no. Louisa studied him, then opened the magnifier and placed it in his palm. She was careful not to touch his skin. He lifted it toward the charter, adjusted the lens, and examined the broken star. The object looked unexpectedly small in his hand. He handled it without turning the hinge too far, and without rubbing the scratch as though it were damage to be corrected. She chose a fine lens, he said. She chose useful things, and taught you to use them. Before she taught me to dance. I suspect the first lesson has served you better. Louisa's mouth curved despite herself. Lawrence closed the magnifier and returned it with both hands, offering rather than placing it upon the table. Again, their fingers did not meet. The absence of contact felt deliberate on both sides. Merton entered from the writing desk carrying a narrow file. Your Grace, I have found Sir Cuthbert's correspondence regarding the proposed London display. Lawrence took the upper sheet. When was it sent? The request is dated the 9th June. Louisa looked up. That was 3 days before Lawrence's arrival at Atherley Hall. Merton continued. Sir Cuthbert asked permission to exhibit several objects in Pall Mall. He referred to a small insured case and stated that Lot 47 would be ready for transfer upon approval. There was no approval, Lawrence said. No. Your secretary at Cranford Park forwarded the request here, but no answer was issued. Then why call it a lot? Louisa asked. Merton turned to a second note. That remains unclear. A porter from Atherley Hall sent an inquiry yesterday, asking whether Lot 47 should be entered with books or separately. Louisa felt the words align with what she had overheard near the service passage. My father told him it remained unchanged. Lawrence looked at her. You heard that? After dinner. Augusta closed the door before I heard more. Merton's expression sharpened. Lady Augusta was present? Yes. Lawrence crossed to the writing desk and took up a pen. Prepare a written order. The Cranford seal is not to be moved, exhibited, insured, consigned, or packed without my signed permission. Send 1 copy to Sir Cuthbert, 1 to the porter, and 1 to the Pall Mall house if you identify it. Merton began writing. Louisa returned the magnifier to her pocket. A warning may prevent an honest mistake. Lawrence paused. You don't believe this is one. Your Grace, my father arranged a lot number before asking permission. He printed a catalogue before securing authorship. He called a broken seal complete because completeness served him. Warning him that you are watching is not the same as stopping him. The criticism remained between them. Lawrence did not defend his rank or his intention. Then what would stop him? Knowing precisely where the object is, knowing who has touched it, knowing whether the case can be changed without the outside appearing disturbed. Merton looked toward the memorandum in his hand. I will investigate the auction house quietly. Lawrence signed the order, and I will not assume obedience because I have written my name beneath a command. Louisa held his gaze. It was the right answer. It was not yet proof. When she and Lydia left Rivington House, the charter remained locked beneath glass, the wax card remained in Louisa's portfolio, and the original seal remained, so far as any of them knew, at Atherley Hall. Behind them, Merton began tracing Lot 47. Ahead of them, somewhere between Kent and Pall Mall, Sir Cuthbert had already planned a transaction that did not require the Duke's consent. Shortly after noon, on Monday the 16th of June, the carriage from London turned into the drive at Atherley Hall. Louisa saw the small mahogany travelling case before the wheels had fully stopped. It stood beneath a dark cloak near the service entrance, one corner exposed beside the porter's boot. White paint marked the lid with the number 47. Beneath it, in narrower letters, was written Pall Mall. The porter was fastening a leather strap around the case when Sir Cuthbert emerged from the side passage. His surprise lasted only an instant. Then his expression settled into paternal irritation. "You've returned earlier than expected." Louisa stepped down with her catalogue portfolio beneath one arm. Lydia followed with the assistance of a footman. "The road was clear," Louisa said. "What is in that case?" Sir Cuthbert glanced at the exposed number. "Duplicate books." "Since when do duplicate books require a numbered auction case?" "Since I decided to sell them." He motioned sharply to the porter. "Take it to the small storeroom." The man obeyed, carrying the case through the service door. Louisa watched until it disappeared. Her wax impression card remained between two clean sheets inside the portfolio. Mr. Merton's signed duplicate condition memorandum lay behind it. The original seal, so far as she knew, remained in the cabinet room. "Did you receive His Grace's written order?" she asked. "I receive a great many letters. This one forbade the Cranford seal from being packed, exhibited, insured, consigned, or moved without his signature." Sir Cuthbert's mouth hardened. "The seal has not moved. Then I should like to see it. You have been away for 2 days and return accusing the household before your trunk is inside. I asked to see an object under my catalogue." "My catalogue?" "Not according to the prospectuses Mr. Merton collected." Lydia came to stand beside Louisa. Sir Cuthbert, a brief inspection would settle the matter. "The cabinet is closed until tonight's preview. Louisa has already shown that she confuses suspicion with scholarship." He lowered his voice. "You will not enter that room and rearrange objects, then claim your memory has been contradicted." The accusation was too ready. Louisa felt it before she understood why. "I have never rearranged the Cranford seal." "Then you will have no reason to object when it is shown this evening exactly as it has always been." He walked toward the house without waiting for agreement. Louisa looked back at the service door. The case marked 47 was no longer visible, but the impression of it remained as sharply as the red wax inside her portfolio. By 7 o'clock, the county preview had filled the long drawing room with collectors, subscribers, and people who had learned to admire antiquities when admiration placed them near a duke. Louisa wore a dark grey gown and carried her mother's folding magnifier in her reticule. Augusta stood near the mantel in pale gold silk, receiving compliments as though Atherley Hall belonged partly to her already. Lawrence arrived with Merton shortly after the rector. His gaze found Louisa across the room. It rested on her face for one measured moment, then moved to the portfolio in her hand. He did not cross to her immediately. Sir Cuthbert had gathered 3 gentlemen around the central prospectus table. "My daughter assisted with the arrangement," he was saying. "She has a neat hand and considerable patience with labels." Louisa approached before Lawrence could intervene. "I prepared the descriptions," she said. "If my name is removed, the descriptions must be removed with it." One of the subscribers looked between father and daughter. Sir Cuthbert smiled with visible effort. Louisa is tired from travel. Travel has not altered the authorship. Augusta touched Louisa's sleeve as though calming a child. Louisa stepped away before the gesture settled. Lawrence came to stand beside the group. Miss Atherley has made her condition clear. Sir Cuthbert's smile thinned. Your Grace, the county guests have not come to hear a family quarrel. Then it is fortunate that authorship is not a family quarrel. Lawrence turned to Louisa. The cabinet room is ready for inspection. Will you return there with me as its cataloguer? He offered his arm. He did not take her hand or move close enough to force acceptance. He waited. Louisa looked at the dark sleeve, then at his face. At Rivington House he had listened when she warned him that a written order was not the same as prevention. Now he was giving her place before the same people her father meant to impress. She set her gloved hand upon his arm. The contact was deliberate, light, and unmistakably her choice. Lawrence's posture changed by scarcely a degree, but she felt the quiet awareness beneath the restraint. Together they crossed the hall with Lydia and Merton following. Only 2 lamps had been lit in the cabinet room. The mahogany seal case stood closed upon the central exhibition table. Sir Cuthbert arrived behind them, as you see, untouched. Louisa looked at the low flames. The light is insufficient. The guests are waiting. Then they may wait until the object can be examined accurately. Lawrence studied the closed case, but did not lift the lid. Miss Atherley is right. We examine it by daylight tomorrow. Sir Cuthbert opened his hands. Surely the presence of the case proves compliance. It proves the case is present, Louisa said. Merton inspected the outer catch, then drew a narrow strip of paper across it. He fixed each end with sealing wax and pressed his signet into both impressions. The lid cannot be opened without breaking this strip, he said. He entered the time and the names of those present in his notebook. Louisa watched the wax cool. The shallow, removable tray beneath the case remained hidden within the table, exactly where it had been when she catalogued the furniture. No one mentioned it. The guests were admitted only long enough to see the sealed case upon the table. Sir Cuthbert apologized for the delayed viewing and blamed excessive caution. Lawrence did not correct him. He merely stated that the matrix would be examined in proper light. Near midnight, when the last carriage had left and the west corridor stood silent, Sir Cuthbert returned with Augusta. The paper strip still crossed the front catch. He did not touch it. Instead, he reached beneath the carved edge of the exhibition table and pressed the old brass release. The shallow inner tray slid free from the side, carrying the genuine Cranford priory seal beneath the sealed outer case. Augusta stared at the bronze, so Merton's seal remains whole. He sealed the lid, not the furniture. Sir Cuthbert lifted the original matrix and wrapped it in soft cloth. Augusta opened the travelling case, marked 47, which had been brought from the storeroom. From a hidden compartment, she removed a second bronze matrix, darkened to resemble age. Its 7-pointed star was perfect. Its border was regular. A narrow collar beneath the handle concealed the join that allowed the upper grip to be unscrewed. Sir Cuthbert placed the counterfeit into the removable tray and slid it back beneath the untouched case. Augusta looked at the wrapped original, and if Louisa notices, she will notice exactly what we need her to notice. He placed the genuine seal inside lot 47 and fastened the straps. On the consignment memorandum, he signed his own name beneath the date, the 16th of June 1817. Augusta hesitated when he offered the pen. "Why must I sign?" because you were present at the packing and identification." She looked once toward the sealed display case, then wrote Lady Augusta Clevedon. Before dawn on the 17th of June, the porter carried lot 47 toward Pall Mall. The paper seals in the cabinet room remained unbroken. The counterfeit waited beneath them, and Louisa slept one floor above it, still believing daylight would reveal the same chipped star she had recorded. The promised daylight inspection did not take place on the 17th of June. Before breakfast, a messenger arrived from Cranford Park with word that Mr. Merton had found an old loan catalogue among the estate papers, one that might contain an earlier description of the priory seal. Lawrence sent a note proposing that the mahogany case remain unopened under Merton's unbroken paper strip until the county exhibition on the 20th of June, when proper lamps, neutral witnesses, and the 2 London antiquarians would be present. Sir Cuthbert agreed with suspicious readiness. Louisa did not. "The seal could be examined today," she told Lydia as they stood outside the locked cabinet room. "The strip is intact," Lydia said. "That proves only that the lid has not been opened." Louisa looked at the old exhibition table beneath it. She had catalogued the removable inner tray, but she had never imagined anyone using it to defeat a seal placed across the outer catch. The thought came and passed without becoming certainty. She had no evidence that the tray had moved. She had only the case marked 47, her father's false explanation, and the knowledge that a man already willing to steal authorship might consider other forms of possession equally flexible. On Wednesday, the 18th of June, Louisa and Lydia travelled the 12 miles to Cranford Park in a closed carriage. The road took them through fields washed pale by early summer sun, but Louisa noticed little beyond the steady pressure of the portfolio against her knees. The dated wax card remained inside. So did Merton's signed duplicate condition memorandum. Her mother's magnifier rested in her pocket. "You are thinking of the sealed case," Lydia said. "I am thinking of what a seal can prove, and what it cannot." Yes, Cranford Park appeared beyond iron gates and a long avenue of elms. The house was older than Rivington House, built of warm grey stone around a central court. East of the main wing stood the remains of the Priory chapter house, its pointed arches open to the sky. Lawrence received them in a modest morning room adjoining the estate archive. He bowed first to Lydia, then to Louisa. His gaze lingered on her face long enough to register concern, but he did not ask whether she had slept. "Miss Atherley, Mrs. Barlow, I'm grateful you came." "Your note," said Mr. Merton found a catalogue, Louisa replied. He found 3 catalogues and a dead moth of considerable age. Only one is useful. Merton stood at a writing desk in the archive beyond the open doors. "The moth's provenance remains disputed," he said without looking up. Lydia's mouth softened. Lawrence indicated a linen-bound volume upon the table. This was compiled approximately 20 years ago, when several Cranford objects were compared with pieces held at Atherley Hall. "Some entries are in my father's hand, others are unsigned." Louisa sat. Lydia took a chair in the adjoining room, close enough to see both of them. Lawrence remained standing until Louisa opened the catalogue. The pages smelled of dust, leather, and old glue. She turned past carved stones, reliquaries, pilgrim badges, and fragments of stained glass until she reached the priory seal. The formal description was brief. Bronze matrix, central saint. Circumscribed legend. Beneath it, in a finer brown hand, someone had added 3 lines. 7-pointed star beneath saint. Lower point chipped through edge. Border thickened at final letters. Louisa stopped. The capital S leaned slightly forward. The lower loop of the G closed too narrowly. The last stroke of each sentence rose as though reluctant to end. She knew that hand. Her mother had used it on household labels, Latin exercises, and the small cards tucked beneath specimens in Louisa's childhood cabinet. "It is hers," Louisa said. The room seemed to contract around the words. Lawrence moved no closer. "Your mother's?" "Yes." Louisa placed one finger beside the annotation without touching the ink. She wrote this. She turned the page. The same hand appeared beside a pilgrim token. 2 pages later, it corrected the date of a painted glass fragment. Farther on, it identified an inscription Sir Cuthbert had later published as his own translation. None of the notes carried Mrs. Atherley's name. In the margin beside one of them, a darker official hand had written, "Mrs. Atherley's domestic assistance confirmed. No authorial attribution required." Louisa read the sentence twice. Her face did not change. Her hands did. They became perfectly still upon the table. "He did it to her too," she said. Lydia rose in the adjoining room, but did not interrupt. Lawrence's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry. You didn't write it." "No," he looked at the old page, "but I understand too well the assumption behind it." Louisa turned toward him. "Do you? I believed my endorsement could give your work legitimacy." His voice remained controlled, but there was no comfort in it. "At Atherley Hall, I admired what you knew. I also imagined public recognition was something I might grant, as though your name became valid only after passing through mine. My name is not a ducal favor." "No," he answered without delay. "It isn't." The simplicity of his agreement affected her more than defense would have. Louisa looked again at her mother's handwriting. For years, she had believed herself the first woman in the family stubborn enough to care whether a date was correct or a name was preserved. Now she saw that the path beneath her feet had been laid by a woman whose work had survived only because ink was more faithful than marriage. "She taught me to read inscriptions," Louisa said, "before she taught me to dance. Then this archive owes her a debt. Archives do not repay debts. People can." She looked at him carefully. "Yes," Lawrence drew a breath. "Miss Atherley, may I hold your hand?" The question entered the silence without trying to command it. Lydia remained visible through the open doorway. Merton continued sorting papers at the distant desk, his back partly turned. Louisa looked at Lawrence's offered hand. This was not the accidental brush over the mahogany case. It was not the formal support of his arm before guests. There was no practical reason for contact and no audience to impress. He was asking because grief had made the space between them too cold. Louisa placed her hand in his. His fingers closed gently around hers. She turned her palm upward, making her consent unmistakable. Lawrence sat beside her, leaving enough distance that their joined hands rested between them rather than drawing her toward him. For several minutes, neither spoke. The old catalogue remained closed beneath Louisa's other hand. His touch did not lessen what Sir Cuthbert had done. It did not pretend to restore her mother. It simply refused to leave her alone with the knowledge. "The notes should be identified," Lawrence said at last. "Every surviving one. Only where the handwriting can be established. You should decide the standard. Not because you permit me, because you know more than I do." Louisa felt the warmth of his hand around hers. "That is a better answer. I am learning slowly." Slow learning is preferable to confident ignorance. A faint smile touched his mouth. Louisa's answered before she could prevent it. When she moved to close the catalogue, Lawrence opened his hand at once. She withdrew without embarrassment. The absence of his touch remained, but it did not feel like loss. It felt like a promise neither of them had named. Merton approached, carrying a narrow packet of correspondence. Your Grace, I've found another reference to the Atherley display. Sir Cuthbert calls the exhibition on the 20th the final local viewing before a London transfer. Lawrence took the page. There is still no authorization. No, Merton said. Yet he writes as though the transfer is settled. Louisa placed her mother's magnifier beside the old catalogue and examined the annotation once more. The chipped star had survived 20 years in ink. If the matrix beneath Merton's unbroken strip was genuine, it would match. If it did not, the absence would speak. I will attend the exhibition, she said. Lawrence looked at her. As the cataloguer? As the woman who knows what should be there. By evening, news of her visit had reached Atherley Hall through a groom who had recognized Lydia's carriage at Cranford's gates. Augusta listened while Sir Cuthbert ordered blue velvet laid across the central table for the exhibition. And the lamps? She asked. Keep them low until the room is full. Sir Cuthbert glanced toward the sealed mahogany case. Beneath the untouched paper strip, the counterfeit waited with its perfect star. By the time Louisa sees it clearly, he said, everyone else will already be watching her fail. By 3 o'clock on Friday the 20th June, the long gallery at Atherley Hall had been arranged to make doubt appear vulgar. Blue velvet covered the central table. Silver branches held more candles than the afternoon required. Yet the flames had been turned low enough to leave the objects in flattering shadow. County subscribers, collectors, and 2 antiquarian, gentlemen from London, moved among reliquaries, coins, and painted glass fragments, while Sir Cuthbert received compliments as though he had excavated each piece with his own hands. Louisa entered beside Mrs. Lydia Barlow, wearing the same plain brown serge dress in which she had first examined the Cranford priory seal. She had chosen it deliberately. If her father meant to make scholarship depend upon silk, she would deny him the argument before he spoke. Her mother's folding tortoise-shell magnifier rested in her reticule. The catalogue portfolio remained beneath her arm, holding the dated red wax impression card and Mr. Merton's signed duplicate condition memorandum. Lawrence stood near the central display with Elias Merton. His gaze found Louisa at once. For a brief moment, the memory of his hand around hers at Cranford Park returned with painful clarity. Then Sir Cuthbert stepped between them. Miss Atherley has arrived, he announced, as though her presence were a concession he had granted. Now this unnecessary concern may be settled publicly. Louisa looked past him. The mahogany case lay upon the blue velvet. Merton's paper strip still crossed the front catch, its wax unbroken. The sight should have reassured her. Instead, she remembered the removable inner tray beneath the exhibition table and the case marked 47, disappearing through the service passage. Lawrence approached, but did not offer his arm or touch her. You're certain you wish to examine it before everyone? He asked quietly. The accusation will be public whether the examination is or not. You may stop at any point. So may you. Something tightened in his expression, but he inclined his head. Merton called the principal witnesses closer. The 2 London antiquarians joined the rector, the widowed collector, and several county subscribers. Augusta stood beside Sir Cuthbert in pearl grey silk, composed enough to suggest rehearsal. Merton displayed the paper strip. This outer case was sealed on the evening of the 16th June in the presence of those named in my memorandum. The paper and wax remain unbroken. He broke both impressions and removed the strip. The room quieted. When he lifted the mahogany lid, the bronze matrix lay upon faded green baize, exactly where an innocent object ought to have rested. At first glance, it resembled the original. The saint occupied the center. The Latin legend circled the edge. The seven-pointed star waited beneath the figure. Louisa unfolded her mother's magnifier and bent over the case. The low candlelight slid across the darkened bronze. She adjusted the lens once. Her breath stopped. The lower point of the star was whole, not worn around an old break, not repaired, whole. She moved the magnifier to the final letters. The border was evenly cut. The irregular thickening had vanished. Every line was too clean. Every edge was too obedient. "Well?" Sir Cuthbert asked. Louisa raised the matrix slightly toward the strongest candle without removing it from the case. "This isn't the seal I examined on the 12th June. A murmur passed through the gallery. One subscriber stepped nearer. Another glanced immediately toward Lawrence rather than Louisa. "The original has a break through the lower point of the seven-pointed star," Louisa continued. "Its border thickens near the final letters. This object has neither feature." One of the London antiquarians leaned over the table. "The bronze appears old." "Bronze can be darkened," Louisa said. "Precision is harder to age." Sir Cuthbert released a short, sorrowful laugh. "There, you hear her. She found a defect when she wished to prove her importance, and now she finds perfection when she wishes to create a scandal." Louisa looked at him. "You know the original was chipped. I know what you wrote." He turned toward the witnesses. "Without permission, my daughter made a private wax impression while alone in the cabinet room. She carried it away and refused to place it with the collection." Lydia's fan closed with a sharp click. "She made a dated record of an object your catalogue described falsely." Augusta stepped forward with practiced hesitation. "No one wants to humiliate Louisa, but she has spoken often of how little recognition women receive. I fear she began to believe a dramatic discovery would make His Grace dependent upon her judgment." The cruelty of the accusation lay in its shape. Augusta did not call Louisa ignorant. She made knowledge itself evidence of hunger. The widowed collector lowered her eyes. One subscriber, who had praised Louisa's measurements at dinner, quietly removed the folded prospectus from his pocket and placed it beneath a catalogue on the side table, as though even possessing her work had become embarrassing. Louisa did not look at Lawrence. She knew too well how rooms measured a woman by the powerful man nearest her. "My impression was made on the 12th June, she said. "It shows the chipped star, Mr. Merton's condition memorandum records the same defect." "A date can be written later," Sir Cuthbert replied. "And Mr. Merton relied upon your description before making his own." "I measured the object independently," Merton said. "The figures agree because the object agreed." Sir Cuthbert ignored him. The case was sealed. The strip was unbroken. "Louisa now asks us to believe the object vanished through solid mahogany." Louisa looked at the old exhibition table. She knew the tray could move. She did not yet know when it had moved, who had moved it, or where the genuine matrix had gone. Knowledge without proof would be turned against her before she finished the sentence. Augusta folded her hands. Louisa knew every detail of the object. She even knew the number hidden inside the hollow handle. The words fell into the room with a weight. Augusta did not appear to recognize. Louisa looked at the bronze grip. No one had opened it. No number had ever been mentioned in her notes, the wax card, or Merton's memorandum. Before she could speak, Merton's pen moved across his notebook. He wrote the sentence exactly. Lawrence's attention shifted to Augusta. "What number?" Augusta blinked. "I only meant whatever private mark Miss Atherley claims to have found." "She has claimed no mark inside the handle," Merton said. Sir Cuthbert stepped forward. "This is wordplay. The central fact remains that Louisa controlled the private impression, and now contradicts an object protected by an unbroken seal." Lawrence moved to the table. For one suspended instant, Louisa believed he would ask her about the removable tray. Instead, he looked toward the two London antiquarians. "My endorsement of the exhibition and catalogue is withdrawn until this dispute is resolved." Sir Cuthbert's face drained of colour. "Your Grace, the subscriptions depend upon your name. Then they should not depend upon an unresolved object." Louisa waited. Lawrence continued. "The matrix must be examined by disinterested antiquarians, whose standing neither side can question." The words struck with the quiet force of a closing door. Her eye had been sufficient when it delighted him in private. Before witnesses, her authority required male confirmation. Lawrence turned to her. "Miss Atherley, give your catalogue, the condition memorandum, and your wax impression to Merton. He'll keep them secure until the examination." "No." Silence spread through the gallery. His voice lowered. "They'll be protected from any claim of alteration. By removing them from the woman who created and preserved them, only temporarily. My work is not a dangerous object to be confiscated when gentlemen become uncomfortable." Pain crossed his face. "Louisa, the room is already against you." It was the first time he had used her given name, and he had chosen the moment when he wanted surrender to feel like intimacy. "Do not use my name to make obedience sound tender," she said. He became still. "You trusted my eye when no one was watching. Now that men are watching you, you have removed it from the room. I haven't called you dishonest. No, you have only decided that honesty requires a gentleman's voice before it becomes safe." He had no answer. Louisa closed the magnifier and returned it to her reticule. She drew the portfolio against her chest. "The catalogue remains with me. So does the wax card and Mr. Merton's duplicate." Lawrence did not order anyone to stop her. He did not reach for the papers. That restraint was the last kindness she could bear from him. Merton placed the counterfeit matrix in a padded travelling case, closed it, sealed both straps with his signet, and entered the witnesses' names in his notebook. Louisa watched until the final wax cooled. Then she turned to Lydia. "We're leaving." Sir Cuthbert's voice followed her toward the door. "If you walk out now, everyone will understand it as guilt." Louisa paused without looking back. "People who require my obedience before they recognize truth have understood nothing." She crossed the gallery without haste. In the entrance hall, Lydia called for the carriage, while Nell brought Louisa's cloak. "Where will you go?" Lydia asked. Louisa fastened the clasp with steady hands. "First, away from this house." She looked down at the portfolio containing the chipped star her father had failed to erase. "Then I shall find the original without asking His Grace to believe me first." At dawn on Saturday, the 21st June, Louisa packed only what could be carried without asking her father's permission. Her catalogue portfolio went beneath her own hand into the carriage. The cream card bearing the red wax impression, dated the 12th June, remained protected between two clean sheets. Mr. Merton's signed duplicate condition memorandum lay behind it. Her mother's folding tortoiseshell magnifier stayed in her reticule, the scratched hinge catching beneath her thumb whenever anger threatened to become haste. Nell Wren placed 2 gowns, linen, and a small writing case into a trunk. then stood beside it with the rigid expression of someone who had already chosen loyalty and expected to pay for it. Sir Cuthbert met them in the entrance hall before the servants could carry the trunk outside. "If you leave now, you confirm every suspicion raised yesterday." Louisa fastened her gloves. "I confirm only that I won't remain where my work is used as evidence against me. You have no independent establishment, Mrs. Barlow has offered me her lodgings." Lydia stood at Louisa's side, in travelling grey, one hand resting upon the head of her cane. "And my offer is not subject to your approval, Sir Cuthbert." He ignored her. "You'll have no allowance if you persist in this display." "Then I'll have no allowance." Louisa looked toward Nell. "Miss Wren is coming with me. She is employed by this household." Nell's face paled, but she did not lower her eyes. "I gave notice to Mrs. Pike before breakfast, sir." Sir Cuthbert stared at the maid as though rebellion had spread through the carpets. "You would abandon a respectable position for a woman determined to ruin herself." Nell swallowed. "I'd rather serve a lady who tells the truth." The silence that followed was brief and complete. Augusta descended the stairs in a pale morning wrapper, perfectly arranged despite the hour. "Louisa, people are already saying you fled the exhibition because the seal proved you wrong. Going to London will only make it seem that you mean to pursue his grace." Louisa turned toward her. "Then people will be disappointed." Augusta's concern sharpened. Attention from a powerful man can make a woman mistake admiration for dependence. And ambition can make another mistake, dependence for affection. A flicker of anger crossed Augusta's face before the smile returned. Sir Cuthbert stepped nearer. "Once you cross that door, you do not return on your own terms." Louisa looked around the hall where her mother's portrait had been removed after her death because Sir Cuthbert disliked being watched by it. "I have never lived here on my own terms." She walked out before he could answer. The journey from Kent to London required nearly 5 hours, with a halt to rest the horses. Lydia's Bloomsbury lodgings occupied the first floor of a sober brick house near Russell Square. There were 2 bed chambers, a drawing room, and a narrow study that smelled of paper and lavender water. It possessed no ancestral silver, no gallery, and no room large enough for Sir Cuthbert's pride. Louisa could breathe there. By evening, however, the first version of the scandal had arrived ahead of them. Lydia's landlady reported that a visitor had called, asking whether Miss Atherley had taken refuge after an unfortunate disagreement with the Duke of Cranford. The following morning, Sunday the 22nd of June, a folded gossip sheet appeared beneath the breakfast tray. It described an unnamed country gentlewoman who had invented defects in a noble antiquity, then attempted to secure the owner's devotion by declaring herself the only persons capable of recognizing truth. Louisa read it once and placed it beneath the teapot. "Augusta works quickly," Lydia said. "My father works quickly when debt is behind him." "And his grace?" Louisa looked toward the window. "He works carefully when the room is watching." A knock sounded at the outer door. Nell entered carrying a brown paper parcel tied with string. "This came from Mr. Hale's shop, miss. His clerk said it was forwarded from Kent, because you asked to see every auction catalogue concerning monastic objects." Louisa untied the parcel. Inside lay a newly printed catalogue from a Pall Mall auction house. She turned the pages without expectation until a number stopped her hand. Lot 47, bronze monastic seal from a Kentish cabinet. Late medieval. Diameter 3 inches and 1/4. Weight 11 ounces. Formerly associated with a private collection near Sevenoaks. Louisa opened her portfolio and laid Merton's signed duplicate beside the entry. The diameter matched, the weight matched. The catalogue omitted the chipped star, but auction descriptions often concealed more than they revealed. "We are going to Pall Mall," she said. Lydia glanced at the clock. "Then we are going properly." Within the hour, their hired carriage drew up before the auction rooms. The building smelled of polished wood, paper, and old objects awaiting new owners. The private viewing room held glass cabinets, small tables, and gentlemen who spoke softly because money preferred the appearance of reverence. Lydia remained beside Louisa, while an assistant led them to lot 47. The mahogany travelling case rested beneath glass. The white number remained visible upon its lid. Inside lay the original Cranford Priory seal. Louisa did not need the magnifier to recognize it, but she unfolded it anyway. Through the lens, the chipped lower point of the seven-pointed star showed clearly. So did the thickened border near the final letters. Her father had not merely removed House Rivington's property. He had trusted that no one would believe the woman who could identify it. Louisa took the wax card from her portfolio and placed it upon the counter without surrendering it. "I need to speak with the auctioneer." The assistant hesitated. "The lot is already entered for sale, madam. The object belongs to House Rivington. Sir Cuthbert Atherley had no authority to consign it." That brought the auctioneer himself, a grave man with silver spectacles and a habit of examining people as though estimating reserves. Louisa showed him the dated wax card, the auction description, and Merton's signed condition memorandum. This impression was made on the 12th of June, while the matrix remained at Atherley Hall. The object, displayed there on the 20th of June, was a substitute. "You are making a serious allegation, Miss Atherley. I am asking you not to sell another man's property while ownership is disputed." Lydia added, "And you may record that Mrs. Barlow witnessed this request." The auctioneer compared the written diameter and weight with his own entry, then bent over the chipped star through Louisa's magnifier. "I can suspend lot 47 for 48 hours, he said. "It will be placed in the strongbox. No private inspection will occur during that period." "Enter the suspension in your ledger," Louisa said. He looked at her over the silver rims. "You have dealt with auction houses before?" "I have dealt with men who prefer memory when records become inconvenient." A corner of his mouth moved, though not quite into a smile. He summoned his clerk. Louisa watched the lot number entered, watched the case closed, and watched two men carry it through an inner door. The auctioneer signed the suspension beside the date, the 22nd of June, 1817. "There is one fact I may confirm without releasing the full consignment file," he said. "Sir Cuthbert Atherley signed the memorandum on the 16th of June. The case was delivered on the 17th of June. Louisa felt the dates settle into place. The original had been consigned before the exhibition and delivered before she was publicly accused. "Was he alone?" she asked. The auctioneer closed the ledger. "A second witness is listed." "Who?" "That name remains confidential until ownership is formally established or the consignor authorizes release." Before Louisa could press further, a carriage stopped outside. Moments later, Lawrence entered with Merton. He saw Louisa beside the empty display cabinet and halted. No relief appeared on her face for him to claim. Merton went directly to the auctioneer. "Your Grace," the man said, bowing, "Miss Atherley has requested suspension of a disputed lot she identifies as property of your house." "She is correct," Lawrence replied. "Merton traced the lot this morning. Louisa closed her portfolio after I had already found it. Pain crossed his face, but he did not defend himself. Yes. Would you have restored my authority if the original had not been waiting under glass? He looked at her for one moment, then answered with the truth. I don't know. The honesty hurt less than reassurance would have. It also healed nothing. Then you don't yet understand what you did. No, he said quietly, but I mean to. Louisa returned the magnifier to her reticule. Honesty is the beginning of an apology, Your Grace. It isn't the completion of one. He accepted the words without moving closer. Behind them, the auctioneer locked the strongbox key into his desk and placed the ledger beneath his hand. Somewhere inside the sealed consignment file, a second witness's name waited beside Sir Cuthbert's, and Louisa knew that whoever had signed it had seen the original leave Atherley Hall before the counterfeit ever appeared upon the blue velvet. Sir Cuthbert's statement reached London before breakfast on Monday the 23rd June. It was copied in an antiquarian circular and repeated in 2 private letters. Miss Louisa Atherley, it declared, had mistaken enthusiasm for scholarship, private grievance for evidence, and the Duke of Cranford's attention for professional judgment. The seal dispute, Sir Cuthbert insisted, had been manufactured by an emotional amateur after a humiliating exhibition. Augusta's name did not appear, but her phrasing did. Lydia laid the circular beside the cold toast. He has learned that if a man cannot destroy a fact, he may still try to make the woman who discovered it sound ridiculous. Louisa stood at the writing table with the auction catalogue beside Merton's signed duplicate memorandum. He needs the 48 hours to expire before ownership is settled. At 11, Nell entered with a card upon a small tray. Lawrence Rivington, Duke of Cranford. Lydia looked at Louisa. Shall I refuse him? Louisa closed the portfolio. No, but the door remains open. Lawrence entered with Merton behind him. He bowed first to Lydia, then to Louisa, and did not move farther until Lydia indicated a chair. Merton remained near the open doorway with his notebook closed. Lawrence looked directly at Louisa. I came to apologize before any further evidence is examined. Then do not begin with what you intended, she said. Begin with what you did. He accepted the correction. At Atherley Hall, I trusted your judgment while it cost me nothing. I praised your knowledge in private rooms where no man required me to defend it. When your conclusion threatened the comfort of titled gentlemen and the standing of my house, I withdrew your authority and called the act caution. Louisa held his gaze. You asked me to surrender my catalogue, my wax card, and Mr. Merton's duplicate memorandum. Yes, his voice did not soften. I treated your papers as dangerous because they contradicted a process I understood how to control. I made mail approval the measure of expertise, after knowing you had proved more accurate than every gentleman in that gallery. You also used my given name when you wanted me to yield. Pain moved across his face. I did. You made intimacy serve authority. I did that too. I am ashamed of it. Silence filled the room. Lydia did not rescue him from it. Louisa would not either. Lawrence folded his hands loosely. I will say all of this before the same subscribers who watched me fail you. I will say it before the seal is opened, before the charter is compared, and before anyone knows whether the result protects House Rivington. Why? Louisa asked. Because what I did was wrong, even if Lot 47 had proved to be another counterfeit. She looked toward the magnifier beside the inkstand. Would you still admit it if I never forgave you? Yes, if I never allowed you to court me. His answer came without delay. Yes. Something within her eased, but it did not disappear. An apology could open a door. It could not require her to cross it. "Then we may discuss the object in Pall Mall," she said. Merton opened his notebook. "There are 5 things that matter. The ancient impression on the Cranford Charter, my dated wax card, the original matrix held as Lot 47, the substitute in Mr. Merton's sealed case, and Sir Cuthbert's consignment file." Lawrence drew a folded sheet from his coat and placed it on the table. The document bore his signature and seal. It identified the matrix by Merton's measurements, and defects denied Sir Cuthbert authority to sell it, and requested that the auctioneer retain it pending a witnessed examination. "The 48 hours expire tomorrow," Louisa said. "Merton has carried a copy to the auction house," Lawrence replied. "The auctioneer has extended the suspension through the examination on the 28th of June. The extension is in his ledger." Merton added, "The original remains in the strong box. No further private viewing is permitted." "Good." "The charter can be brought from Rivington House under glass," Lawrence said. "Not yet." His eyes sharpened, but he did not object. "What do you require?" "The witnesses who saw me discredited must be invited. The auctioneer must preside. If you control the room, Sir Cuthbert will call the result ducal preference, and you must not review the order in which I present the proof." Lawrence looked at her. "You do not want me to appear to have coached you." "I do not want you to coach me." "Fair, the rest can be settled after I know who else was named in the consignment file." "The auctioneer will not release that name before the examination," Merton said. "But there is another piece of knowledge we possess." He opened his notebook to the page, dated the 20th June. Lady Augusta said, and I recorded exactly. She even knew the number hidden inside the hollow handle. Louisa frowned. "No handle was opened." "No," Merton said, "and no number appeared in your impression, your notes, or my memorandum." Lawrence leaned forward slightly. Could she have guessed the handle was hollow? "She did not guess," Louisa said. "She named a hidden number. The original grip is solid. If the substitute has a removable cap or hollow handle, Augusta knew something about its construction before any of us did." Merton tapped the notebook. "Her sentence may prove prior access, but only if a mark is found. Then no one opens the handle before witnesses arrive," Louisa said, "and Augusta's sentence must be read before it is touched." Lawrence nodded. "Agreed." Merton recorded the instruction. Louisa returned to the writing table and opened her portfolio. She removed the cream card, still protected between clean sheets. "You may read the notation," she told Lawrence. He rose but stopped a full step away. Only when she extended the card farther did he hold out his hand, palm upward. Louisa placed it above his palm, careful not to touch the red wax. Their fingertips nearly met. Both noticed. Neither closed the distance. Lawrence read the inscription. 12 June 1817. L.A., before I knew your identity, before the prospectus dinner, before the case was sealed, before the original reached Pall Mall. Yes, he looked at the broken star. This should have been enough for me to keep your authority intact. Louisa took the card back. Their fingers came close again, but he made no attempt to catch her hand. He had learned that wanting closeness did not entitle him to create it. Merton closed his notebook. Sir Cuthbert has sent copies of his statement to the 2 London antiquarians. He claims the wax card was prepared after the exhibition. Lydia made a sound of disgust. Louisa slid the card between its clean sheets. Then the card must not stand alone. The charter proves the defect existed before any of us. The original must reproduce it. The counterfeit must fail. The consignment dates must show the original left before the accusation. and if the handle contains a number, Augusta's words must be read before anyone sees it. Lawrence rose. You have arranged the proof. I have arranged the order in which truth is least vulnerable to rank. He absorbed the rebuke without flinching. What do you require from me now? Access, written ownership. The charter when I ask for it. Nothing more. And after that, Louisa met his eyes. After that, we will know whether you can stand beside a woman whose evidence does not need your permission. Lawrence bowed. Then I will begin by not asking for forgiveness before I have earned the right to hear your answer. He left without touching her hand, her papers, or the magnifier beside the inkstand. Only after the door closed did Louisa look down at the wax card and realize that, for the first time since Atherley Hall, she no longer feared he would try to protect the truth by taking it away from her. By Tuesday, the 24th June, Sir Cuthbert's accusation had begun to cost Louisa more than reputation. A county subscriber who had promised to support the corrected catalogue sent a brief note withdrawing his name until the unfortunate disagreement between Miss Atherley and her father had been resolved. He did not mention the original seal in the Pall Mall strongbox. He did not mention the dated impression, Merton's memorandum, or the consignment entered before the public accusation. He wrote only that a gentleman could not be expected to judge a family dispute. Augusta's version travelled more gracefully, in drawing rooms near Grosvenor Square. She suggested that the Duke of Cranford had become personally attached to Louisa to distinguish affection from evidence. If he defended Louisa, the defence would prove partiality. If he remained silent, the silence would prove doubt. Lydia read the withdrawn subscription note in the small Bloomsbury drawing room and placed it beside the Morning Post. They have built a trap in which every action confirms the accusation. Louisa stood at the window with the plain brown serge dress laid across a chair behind her. Then we will not answer the accusation with an action they can own. What do you propose? The same people who watched my authority removed must watch the evidence restored. Nell, sorting correspondence at the writing table, looked up. Even Sir Cuthbert, especially Sir Cuthbert. Lydia studied her niece. A smaller examination would be safer. A smaller examination would allow him to say the result was arranged in private. Louisa turned from the window. The auctioneer must preside. Not His Grace, not Mr. Merton, not either antiquarian gentleman. And you, I will conduct the comparison. The answer did not sound brave to Louisa. It sounded necessary. Courage was often only necessity spoken aloud before fear could disguise it as caution. Lawrence arrived that afternoon with Merton and a draft invitation. He sent his card first and waited below until Lydia permitted the call. When he entered, he did not bring the confidence of a man expecting agreement. He carried a folded paper and placed it upon the table between them. This names the auctioneer as the person presiding over a private examination on the 28th June, he said. It invites the subscribers who attended Atherley Hall, the two London antiquarians, Sir Cuthbert, Lady Augusta, Mrs. Barlow, and Miss Wren. Louisa read the draft. Her name appeared twice. Miss Louisa Atherley would conduct the comparison. Miss Louisa Atherley would present the catalogue records. She was not described as the Duke's adviser, his witness, or a woman under his protection. You named me as the cataloguer, she said, because you are the cataloguer. You did not say the object will be proved genuine. I do not know what the room will establish until you establish it. The answer mattered. Louisa set down the invitation. There are conditions. Name them. The Cranford Charter must leave Rivington House and enter the auctioneer's keeping before the examination. Merton's attention shifted toward Lawrence. The charter had survived centuries because generations of Rivingtons had treated movement as danger. Lawrence did not hesitate. Agreed. It travels beneath glass in a locked case. There must be a written entry when it leaves your house and another when it reaches Pall Mall. Agreed. You will not review the order in which I present the objects. Agreed. You will not stand at the head of the room. A flicker of understanding crossed his face. Agreed. And if the evidence embarrasses House Rivington, you will accept that before you know the result. The room became quiet. Lawrence looked toward the plain dress upon the chair, then back to Louisa. If my father's lending practices allowed this theft, that will be said. If my own conduct gave the false accusation weight, that will be said. If the charter exposes carelessness in my house, I will not ask you to soften it publicly. Before the same people who saw me fail you, Louisa held his gaze. Then I will conduct the comparison. Merton opened his notebook. The auctioneer asks whether the substitute handle may be examined before the gathering. A metalworker wishes to know what tool may be required. No, Louisa said. No one opens it. Lawrence nodded. Augusta's sentence must be read first. Yes. And the second witness in the consignment file? Merton asked. The auctioneer will not disclose the name until the full file is opened before those present. Louisa looked at him. Good. Let that remain unknown. Even to his grace. Especially to his grace. Lawrence accepted the boundary without protest. A footman delivered another note while Merton copied the conditions. It came from the widowed collector who had attended both the dinner and the exhibition. She would attend the comparison. But she warned that Sir Cuthbert was telling the county. Louisa had bewitched the Duke into surrendering judgment. Lawrence read the sentence once. He believes surrendering control is the same as losing judgment. Louisa folded the letter. Most men do when a woman is the one receiving it. Then he will misunderstand me publicly. The invitations went out that evening. On Wednesday, the 25th of June, one antiquarian accepted and the other delayed, claiming concern that his presence might lend dignity to a domestic quarrel. Lawrence sent no personal appeal. The auctioneer wrote instead that the gentleman's prior attendance at Atherley Hall made his absence relevant to the record. The acceptance arrived before nightfall. On Thursday, the 26th of June, the Cranford charter left Rivington House. Louisa and Lydia arrived at Pall Mall before the transfer carriage. The auctioneer had cleared a private chamber behind the sale room. A long table stood beneath steady daylight, with lamps ready for the following morning if clouds gathered. The original seal remained in the strong box under the extended entry dated 23rd June. Merton's padded case containing the counterfeit rested in his possession, both wax seals intact. No object had been opened. Shortly before noon, a closed Rivington carriage stopped outside. Merton supervised two footmen, carrying a locked travelling case into the room. Lawrence followed without touching it. The auctioneer examined the seals, read the departure receipt, and compared Merton's signature with the one already held in his ledger. Only then did he unlock the outer case. The charter remained beneath glass, its wax impression undisturbed. He placed it inside a locked cabinet and entered the time of arrival. Lawrence signed beneath the entry. From this moment, the auctioneer said, "The charter remains in my keeping until the examination is concluded. No member of House Rivington may remove or inspect it without my presence and a second witness." "Understood," Lawrence replied. The words were simple, But Louisa knew what they cost. He had placed the oldest record of his house beyond his own private reach because she had asked him to prove that trust was more than approval. One of the clerks handed Lawrence a new gossip sheet that had reached the auction room with the Morning Post. It suggested that a duke in love might manufacture a scandal to save a woman from embarrassment. Lawrence read it, then gave it to the auctioneer, add it to the correspondence. He did not defend himself. He did not ask Louisa to reassure him. He let the accusation remain beside the written evidence of what he had surrendered. By evening, the clerks had left. Merton reviewed the witness list at a distant desk. Lydia stood near the open door, speaking with the auctioneer about seating. Louisa remained beside the locked cabinet containing the charter. Lawrence approached only as far as the opposite end of the table. "You could still take it back," she said. "Yes, your trustees would prefer it." "Yes, your father never allowed the charter outside family keeping. My father also allowed the seal to remain at Atherley Hall without a proper receipt." Louisa looked through the glass at the ancient wax. "You have not asked whether my proof will protect your house. It is not your duty to protect my house from the truth. You have not asked what order I will use. You told me not to. You have not asked whether I think Sir Cuthbert acted alone." Lawrence's expression changed, but he remained where she had left him. "I want to ask, but you will not." No, the answers reached the place in her that apologies had opened but could not fill, at Atherley Hall. Lawrence had trusted her until trust threatened his standing. Here, he had accepted uncertainty, public ridicule, and the temporary loss of control over his family's oldest charter without demanding that she reward him for it. Louisa crossed one step of the distance between them. He did not move. "You understand this part now," she said. "I am beginning to. No, this part at least you understand." She crossed the remaining space and placed her arms around him. The embrace belonged to her before it belonged to him. Lawrence held still for one breath, giving her every chance to withdraw. She did not. His arms came around her with careful certainty, neither tightening nor drawing her closer than she had chosen. Louisa rested her cheek against his coat and felt the steady rise of his breathing. He said nothing. That restraint made the moment safer than any promise. After several heartbeats, she stepped back. Lawrence released her at once. His eyes held hers with an openness that made the quiet room seem smaller. "We will not discuss what this means before the examination," she said. "No, and you will not treat it as forgiveness completed." "I will not." A faint warmth entered his expression. "But I will remember that you chose it." Louisa looked toward the locked charter, Merton's sealed case, and the auction ledger holding the extended suspension. "In 2 days, Augusta will enter a room where she expects 2 gentlemen to decide whether I deserve to be heard." Lawrence followed her gaze. "Then she will discover that the only person conducting the proof is Miss Louisa Atherley." On Friday, the 27th June, the Pall Mall auction room felt less like a place of commerce than a chamber waiting to decide which truth would be permitted to survive. The outer shutters stood half open against the summer light. Lamps had been placed at Louisa's request, so that no shadow could fall across the matrices when they were examined. At the center of the private room, a long table remained bare except for numbered cards, marking where each object would be placed the following morning. The auctioneer reviewed the arrangements once, without ceremony. Lot 47 remained in his strongbox under the extended suspension entered on the 23rd June. The counterfeit stayed inside Mr. Merton's padded case both wax seals intact. The Cranford Charter rested beneath glass in the auctioneer's locked cabinet. Louisa's wax impression card and catalogue portfolio remained with Lydia. Merton kept his notes upon his person. The full consignment file would remain closed until the examination began. Nothing would be opened early. Nothing would be handled alone. Nothing would depend upon memory when a written record existed. Louisa stood beside the central table in her plain brown serge dress, her mother's folding tortoiseshell magnifier resting in her pocket. She had rehearsed the sequence only with Lydia. Lawrence had not seen it. Merton had not asked for it. The auctioneer knew only where the objects were to be placed, not the order in which Louisa would use them. Again, Lydia said from the chair nearest the open side door. Louisa began. The charter impression first, then my dated card, then the original from the strongbox, then the fresh impression made from it, then the counterfeit. Mr. Merton reads Augusta's sentence before the handle is opened. And the consignment file. After the objects establish their own identities. Lydia nodded. Good. A clerk entered carrying a folded note. From Sir Cuthbert Atherley, madam. Louisa broke the seal. Her father's message contained no apology and no denial. He would attend, he wrote, but he would not submit to questioning by a daughter who had already prejudged him. Louisa read the line twice, then placed the note upon the table. He thinks refusing to answers will preserve authority, Lydia said. He has confused silence with innocence for years. A quiet knock sounded at the side door. Lawrence entered with Merton behind him. He stopped upon seeing the note beside Louisa's hand. From Sir Cuthbert. He will attend, Louisa said. He will not answer me. Lawrence's expression hardened. The auctioneer can remove him if he obstructs you. No, no. He must remain unless his behavior makes the examination impossible. Louisa folded the note once. He has spent years leaving rooms before truth could cost him anything. Tomorrow he will stay long enough to hear it. Lawrence studied her face. You are permitted to change your mind. So are you. About allowing him to remain? About allowing your house to be examined by a woman your peers have called an amateur? His answer came without hesitation. I have not changed my mind. Neither have I. Merton crossed to the auctioneer's desk and entered the latest correspondence into the ledger. Lydia rose, collected the portfolio, and moved toward the far end of the room. She remained within sight through the open doorway. Lawrence did not use the relative privacy to come closer. He stood several feet from Louisa, his hands loose at his sides. There is something I need to say before tomorrow, he said. Louisa felt her pulse change. If it concerns the evidence, say it now. It does not. Then it may wait. It can wait forever if you wish. His voice remained quiet. But I do not want silence to become another form of strategy. Louisa looked at him. The strain in his face had nothing to do with fear of the charter or his family name. Speak plainly, she said. Lawrence drew a measured breath. At first, I admired that you spoke to me without knowing my title. Then I admired that you continued after learning it. I told myself that admiration was honorable because I listened when others did not. You did listen, privately. He did not soften the word. I liked being the man who recognized you. It allowed me to believe I was different from the men who ignored you, without asking whether I was willing to trust you when recognition became costly. Louisa held his gaze. And were you? No, not at Atherley Hall. He accepted the answer as though it were evidence entered against him. I failed precisely when trust required something from me. The old hurt did not vanish. It remained where it belonged no longer hidden beneath his apology or her affection. "Why tell me this now?" she asked. "Because tomorrow I will admit my failure before the room. I do not want you wondering whether I did it to win you." "And did you?" "No." The certainty in his voice did not seek approval. "I would make the same admission if you never permitted me another private conversation." Louisa looked toward the locked cabinet holding the charter. "You know, Sir Cuthbert will say affection has already corrupted your judgment. He may say it. Augusta will say I used your feelings to control the proceeding. She may say that too, and you will not answer for me. No, you will answer with the objects." The response was exactly right. It did not flatter her. It did not promise rescue. It placed the burden of truth where she had chosen to carry it, and promised only that he would not take it away. Lawrence remained still. "I know what I feel for you," he continued, "but I will not name it in a way that asks for an answer before tomorrow. I will not use affection as another argument for why you should forgive me." Louisa crossed one step of the distance between them. He did not move. She raised her hand and touched his cheek. His skin was warm beneath her fingertips. Surprise passed through his expression, followed by a vulnerability she had never seen him offer without words. He did not turn his face into her palm. He waited. "Louisa," he said, and this time her name held no command. "May I kiss you?" The question settled between them, clear enough to refuse. The room remained open to Lydia's view. Merton stood at the distant desk. Nothing in the moment was hidden, yet nothing about it belonged to anyone else. Louisa felt desire rise beside memory, not in place of it. She remembered his hand closing around hers at Cranford Park, his request for her papers at Atherley Hall, his apology in Bloomsbury, and the charter he had placed beyond his own control. Because she asked him to prove he understood. "Yes, Lawrence." He moved only after the word. Louisa closed half the distance herself, his hand lifted toward her waist, then stopped before touching. She leaned nearer. Only then did he rest it lightly against her side. The kiss was tender and deliberate. There was no urgency in it, no claim, and no attempt to make passion erase what remained unfinished. Louisa felt the careful pressure of his mouth, the breath he drew when she did not retreat, and the restraint with which he allowed her to determine the nearness. She touched his cheek once more, then ended the kiss and stepped back. Lawrence released her at once. Neither spoke for several heartbeats. The locked cabinet remained locked. The consignment file remained closed. Sir Cuthbert's refusal still lay upon the table. Tomorrow had not become easier because they had kissed. It had only become more honest. "This changes nothing about tomorrow," Louisa said. "I know, but it was mine to give." A quiet warmth entered his eyes, "and I will remember that." He did not ask for another kiss. He did not reach for her hand. He bowed and returned to Merton, leaving Louisa the space she had chosen. The following morning, Saturday the 28th June, the auctioneer checked every lock and seal before ordering the outer doors opened. The subscribers entered first, followed by the two London antiquarians, the rector and the widowed collector. Augusta arrived in pearl-grey silk, carrying confidence like a weapon concealed beneath courtesy. Sir Cuthbert came behind her with his gloves clenched in one hand. Lawrence took the chair assigned to him at the side of the room, not at the head of the table. Lydia held the portfolio. Merton kept his notebook closed. Louisa stood before the sealed evidence in her plain brown dress, with her mother's magnifier in her pocket. The auctioneer closed the doors, looked toward her, and said, "Miss Atherley, the room is yours." Lawrence rose before Louisa touched the first piece of evidence. The subscribers turned toward him with the instinctive attention rank had trained into them, but he remained beside the chair assigned at the edge of the room. He did not approach the head of the table. "Before Miss Atherley begins, I must correct my own conduct at Atherley Hall," he said. "I trusted her judgment in private, then withdrew her authority when that judgment became costly before witnesses. I treated the approval of titled gentlemen as more reliable than the knowledge she had already proved. Whatever these objects establish today, that failure was mine. My rank helped a false accusation survive." Sir Cuthbert shifted sharply. "Your Grace, this is hardly the place for personal remorse." Lawrence looked at him. "It's precisely the place." Then he sat, and the room belonged to Louisa. The auctioneer unlocked the cabinet containing the Cranford Charter. 2 clerks carried it to the central table without removing it from beneath glass. Louisa unfolded her mother's tortoise-shell magnifier. Her hand was steady. "This charter predates everyone in this room," she said. "Its wax impression was made from the genuine Cranford priory matrix. Please observe the 7-pointed star beneath the saint." One London antiquarian bent closer. "The lower point is broken through to the edge. Yes, the border also thickens near the final letters." The widowed collector confirmed both details. Louisa turned to Lydia. Her aunt brought forward the cream card, still protected between 2 clean sheets. "On the 12th June, before I knew Mr. Rivington was the Duke of Cranford, I made this impression from the matrix then held at Atherley Hall." She displayed the red wax and the inscription beneath it. "The same broken point and irregular border appear here." The second antiquarian frowned. "A date can be written later." "Correct," Louisa said. "That's why the card doesn't stand alone." At her signal, the auctioneer opened the strong box. He removed lot 47 in its mahogany travelling case, entered the movement in his ledger, and placed the original bronze matrix upon clean baize. Its chipped star caught the morning light. A shallow dish of warmed red wax waited nearby. The auctioneer himself pressed the matrix into it. When he lifted the bronze, the fresh impression displayed the same break through the lower point and the same crowded border. A murmur moved through the room. "Lot 47 is the original Cranford Priory seal," Louisa said. "It reproduces the defects recorded in the ancient charter, my dated card, and Mr. Merton's condition memorandum of the 12th June. Sir Cuthbert rose halfway. "That proves only that the seal reached Pall Mall. It doesn't prove I acted dishonestly." "We haven't yet reached the consignment file," Louisa replied. "Please sit down." He stared at her as though 31 years of command should have made the sentence impossible. The auctioneer's expression did not change. Sir Cuthbert sat. Merton brought forward the padded case sealed at Atherley Hall. He displayed the unbroken wax on both straps and read the witnesses' names from his notebook. After the auctioneer confirmed the seals, Merton broke them. The substitute matrix lay inside. A second impression was made. Its 7-pointed star emerged perfect. Its border was uniformly regular. "This is the object displayed on the 20th of June, Louisa said. "It isn't the matrix I examined 8 days earlier." Augusta lifted her chin. "Or it's another copy, introduced after the exhibition by someone who needed the contrast. Then we must ask who knew its private construction before today." Louisa turned to Merton. He opened his notebook to the page dated the 20th of June. "Lady Augusta Clevedon said, and I recorded exactly, she even knew the number hidden inside the hollow handle." Augusta's face lost color. "I was repeating Louisa's claim." "I made no such claim," Louisa said. The handle hadn't been opened. No number appears in my notes, wax impression, or Mr. Merton's memorandum. A neutral metalworker waited beside the table with small tools laid upon a cloth. Louisa looked to the auctioneer. Please ask him to examine the handle without or altering any mark found within it. The auctioneer gave the instruction. The metalworker tested the upper grip, found a narrow collar beneath the darkened bronze, and turned it carefully. The cap loosened. He unscrewed it and held the hollow handle beneath the lamp. Inside, stamped into the metal, were the characters B 181647. No one spoke. Louisa faced Augusta. How did you know a number was hidden there 8 days before the handle was opened? Augusta's fan trembled once. You told me at Cranford Park. You weren't at Cranford Park. Then Nell told me. Nell stepped forward from the rear of the room, pale but composed. No, my lady. You asked whether Miss Atherley had ever made a private impression, alone. You never asked me about a number, and I didn't know one existed. Augusta's composure cracked, but she gathered it again. I saw only a sealed packing case. Sir Cuthbert may have mentioned a workshop mark. I never saw either matrix. The auctioneer opened the full consignment file. Then this entry requires explanation. He read aloud, Lot 47, bronze monastic seal matrix, packed and identified at Atherley Hall on the 16th of June 1817. Consignor, Sir Cuthbert Atherley. Witness present at packing and identification, Lady Augusta Clevedon. He turned the ledger so the signatures could be seen. Augusta's name stood beneath Sir Cuthbert's. Her fan lowered. Sir Cuthbert did not look at her. You said the original would be sold and returned before anyone knew, she said to him. You said Louisa's obsession with defects would make her easy to discredit. You foolish girl, he replied. You told me the Duke's endorsement would preserve the London lease. You said, if Louisa was exposed as unstable, His Grace would see that I was the more suitable connection. Augusta's voice shook, but the confession had begun, and pride could no longer stop it. I helped identify the original. I saw the counterfeit before it was placed in the tray. Sir Cuthbert showed me the hollow grip and the workshop mark so I wouldn't confuse the two. Louisa felt the words strike and pass through her. They no longer defined the room. The auctioneer read Sir Cuthbert's memorandum, dated the 16th of June. Then the delivery entry dated the 17th of June. The original had been consigned before the exhibition and delivered 3 days before Louisa was accused of inventing its disappearance. The sale is cancelled, the auctioneer said. House of Rivington is recognized as owner. The matter of Sir Cuthbert's unauthorized consignment will be preserved in the business record. Lawrence rose only after Louisa nodded. House of Rivington withdraws all patronage from Sir Cuthbert Atherley and recalls every object lent to his keeping. I won't satisfy any debt arising from this transaction. The senior subscriber present stood. On the evidence heard today, I will propose that Sir Cuthbert's name be struck from the county antiquarian subscription. The second subscriber added his support. Others followed. Sir Cuthbert's face tightened. Without Cranford patronage, the London lease cannot be maintained. Lawrence's voice remained controlled. Then it must be sold. Augusta was informed that Rivington House and Cranford Park would no longer receive her. Lydia's widowed acquaintance in Bath agreed to take her temporarily, but no one called exile forgiveness. The two London antiquarians withdrew their statements against Louisa. The widowed collector requested that the corrected catalogue be printed under the name Miss Louisa Atherley. Merton added, before the room, that every surviving annotation established as Mrs. Atherley's hand would be credited to her. For the first time that morning, Louisa's composure threatened to break. Not at her own name, but at her mother's, she lowered her eyes to the magnifier in her hand until the moment passed. The auctioneer completed the final entries. The original and counterfeit were placed in separate, sealed cases. Merton signed a receipt for both. The charter returned to its locked travelling case beneath glass and passed to him under a separate receipt. Each item would travel to Cranford under recorded custody. Sir Cuthbert left without looking at his daughter. Louisa did not ask him to remain. When the last subscriber had gone and Lydia stood near the open door, Lawrence remained beside the evidence table without approaching. "I said what I owed the room," he told Louisa. "Now I must say what I owe you." She set down the magnifier. "Speak plainly. I love you, Louisa. I loved your honesty before I deserved your trust. I love the mind that saw what everyone else found convenient to overlook. But I don't ask you to disappear into my gratitude, my protection, or my title." Louisa crossed the space between them and reached for his hand first. His fingers closed around hers only after she had chosen the contact. "I love you too, Lawrence, but I won't disappear inside your title." Emotion moved openly across his face. "Then may I ask one ordinary thing?" "You may." "May I court you properly without treating today as a debt you must repay?" Louisa looked at the sealed cases, her catalogue portfolio, and the cream card that had survived every demand to surrender it. "You may court me," she said, "but I'm not accepting a proposal today." A quiet smile reached his eyes. "Then I won't make one." They remained hand in hand beside the evidence that had required no title to become true. For 4 weeks after the Pall Mall examination, Lawrence courted Louisa as though patience were not a test he meant to pass, but a habit he intended to keep. He called at Mrs. Barlow's Bloomsbury lodgings at proper hours. He walked with Louisa in Russell Square, while Lydia followed at a distance sufficient for conversation and close enough for propriety. He listened when Louisa disagreed with his plans for the Cranford collection, and when instinct urged him to settle a matter by rank, she had only to lift one eyebrow for him to stop and ask what authority he was about to take from someone else. He did not always agree with her. That was part of what made the courtship real. Once, when a solicitor directed every question to Lawrence, Lawrence turned to Louisa and said, "The catalogue receipts are hers. Ask the person whose work created them." When she later rejected a clause he had approved, he read it again instead of defending himself. The original Cranford Priory seal, the counterfeit, and the charter returned from Pall Mall under separate receipts. Mr. Merton supervised the journey. The original travelled in a sealed case. The counterfeit travelled in another, its opened hollow handle recorded before departure. The charter remained beneath glass, inside its locked travelling case. Each arrival was entered into the Cranford archive ledger, and the auctioneer's receipts were filed beside Merton's condition memorandum and the certified copy of Sir Cuthbert's consignment record. On Saturday the 26th July, Lawrence brought Louisa and Lydia to Cranford Park. The ruined chapter house had been cleared of weeds and loose stone, but the permanent gallery existed only in measured drawings spread across a long table. Sunlight entered through the empty arches and fell across plans for secure display cases, a northern workroom, and a public gallery positioned beside it rather than in front of it. Lawrence had placed no ring upon the table. No servants waited behind doors. No witnesses had been arranged to make refusal difficult. Lydia moved toward the far arch, remaining within sight. Louisa studied the revised plans. You moved the cataloguing room. Yes, the first drawing placed it behind the gallery. The first drawing assumed visitors should see the collection and never the labor that made it intelligible. Lawrence stood opposite her, his hands still except for one thumb moving once along the edge of his glove. I thought I was being generous by giving you a private room. You pointed out that privacy can become another form of disappearance. It often does. So the workroom stands beside the gallery. The door remains visible. The catalogue tables will bear the names of those who prepare them. Louisa looked toward the broken arch framing the summer sky. The lesson is not complete. I hope it never is. His answer came without ornament. Louisa, I love you. I do not ask you to marry me because I defended you at Pall Mall. I should have done that without reward. I do not ask you to become grateful enough to enter my house, or quiet enough to fit inside my title. He came no closer. I ask whether you will share my life, while keeping your mind, your work, your name, and your right to tell me when I am wrong. The tenderness in his voice did not weaken the question. It strengthened it. Louisa let the silence remain long enough to be honest. She thought of Atherley Hall, the blue velvet, the catalogue without her name, the room where Lawrence had failed her, the later room where he had surrendered control, before knowing whether truth would spare him. Love had not erased any of it. Love had changed what both of them were willing to do afterward. Louisa crossed the stone floor and held out her hand. Yes, Lawrence, I will marry you. Relief moved openly across his face. He took her hand only after she offered it. May I give you the ring now? You may. He drew a small box from his coat. Inside lay a simple gold ring, set with a modest sapphire, elegant without display. He slid it onto her finger, then looked at her as though the answer still deserved protection after it had been given. Louisa lifted her free hand and touched his cheek. I love you, she said, not because you finally believed me, because you learned that belief must change what you do. I love you, he answered, and I intend to keep learning. Their marriage settlement was prepared by an independent solicitor chosen with Lydia's approval. 2 trustees secured a separate annuity for Louisa, her books, catalogue plates, mother's magnifier, and the receipts arising from future catalogues remained to her separate use. A fund was established for the continued cataloguing of the Cranford collection, with Louisa empowered to choose assistants and approve publication. The bans were read on the 3rd of August, the 10th of August, and the 17th of August. They were married on Thursday, the 21st August 1817, in Cranford Parish Church, before a congregation smaller than society expected and warmer than Sir Cuthbert would have arranged. Louisa wore ivory silk because she chose it, not because anyone had ordered her to soften herself. Lydia stood beside her. Nell wept quietly and denied it afterward. Merton signed the register with the same exact hand that had preserved Augusta's fatal sentence. Sir Cuthbert did not attend. His London lease was sold, his influence among the county subscribers diminished, and his letters to Louisa received only measured replies. She allowed correspondence when it remained respectful and ended it whenever command returned. Augusta remained in Bath with a widowed relation. Her first apology blamed fear. Her second blamed Sir Cuthbert. Only the third named Louisa's injury without excuse. Louisa acknowledged the letter, but did not restore an intimacy repentance had not yet earned. By April 1818, the Chapter House gallery was ready. Months of careful work had secured the old stone, fitted the glass cases, and arranged the records so no object depended upon one man's memory. the original Cranford Priory seal, stood beneath glass beside the ancient charter impression. The counterfeit occupied a separate case with its hollow handle open and the workshop mark B 1816-47 visible. Its label did not call it a curiosity. It called it a warning against false provenance, careless custody, and authority untested by evidence. Before the first invited visitors arrived, Louisa entered wearing her plain brown serge dress. The cuffs had been brushed. The hem had been lightly repaired where years of work had roughened it. The gown remained unmistakably the one she had worn on the 12th June. Lawrence found her beside the central case, where the corrected catalogue lay open beneath the morning light. Merton's transfer receipts rested in the archive drawer below, confirming the return of the original seal, the counterfeit, and the charter from Pall Mall to Cranford. Louisa had not yet looked at the title page. She turned it now. The printed words read, "Catalogued by Miss Louisa Atherley, 1817. Beneath them, in smaller type, appeared, "Surviving annotations by Mrs. Atherley identified and credited where the hand could be established." Louisa became very still. Her mother's name had survived, not as domestic assistance, not as a charming accomplishment, as authorship. Lawrence said nothing. He did not explain the meaning to her or place his gratitude over the moment. He simply stood beside her until she closed her eyes once and opened them again. "There is one question," he said at last. The printer asked whether future editions should replace Miss Louisa Atherley with the Duchess of Cranford. Louisa looked at the page. The work was done under the name Miss Louisa Atherley. "Then that is the name that remains." No hesitation entered his voice. "I wanted to be certain you knew I agreed." A faint smile touched her mouth. "For once, your agreement is unnecessary. That is becoming one of my favorite lessons." The outer doors remained closed. For another minute, the gallery belonged only to them. Louisa placed her mother's folding tortoise-shell magnifier upon the open catalogue, then turned toward Lawrence. She rose onto her toes and kissed him before he could ask. Surprise softened instantly into affection. His hands settled lightly at her waist, waiting until she leaned closer before holding her. The kiss was warm, unhurried, and wholly theirs. When Louisa drew back, Lawrence rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said, "even when I correct you. Most urgently then." She laughed, and the sound moved through the old chapter house without apology. "I love you too." Merton's discreet knock announced the first guests. Lawrence released her at once and offered his hand. Louisa took it. Together they stepped aside so the catalogue, the true seal, and the restored record could be seen without obstruction. On the open page, her mother's magnifier rested over the words Miss Louisa Atherley, enlarging the name beneath the glass, while the reflection above it held Louisa and Lawrence, standing side by side, neither one obscuring the other.